Welcome to the Old Men of the Three Things with JJ Redick and the Dunker Spot. Nekias, Duncan, and Steve Jones. Nekias, you know I had to rep birds on this lovely Monday morning. How we doing, fellas?
Doing pretty well. I think about a week away from either one of us for getting the call for being the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. So I guess we got to be on the lookout for that. That part's fun, but doing well otherwise.
Good. Let's start with Kawhi Leonard and the LA Clippers. Right now, the hottest team in basketball. They've won 7 in a row over their last 14 games. They're 11-3, tied for the best record with the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Wolves. And they're playing as well as anybody in basketball, and Kawhi Leonard himself is playing as well as anyone in basketball. What are you guys seeing for both the Clippers in general and also Kawhi? How is he playing so efficiently?
Well, I think it's I like that you mentioned they're 11-3. My favorite part is they're 11-3 with the starting lineup of James Harden, Terrence Mann, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Zubac. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. But Kawhi Leonard has been on fire. I think the biggest thing for me has been a shift. At the start of the quote-unquote Harden run, it felt like a lot of let's see what's going on. Let's see what's happening. Let's explore pick and roll. Let's maybe mix in Paul George. You felt a shift to, okay, Kawhi, it's time. Let's get you involved earlier. Let's let you get going earlier. He's getting involved in different ways, in the post and pick and roll. I mean, this month of December, it's only 7 games, but 29 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shoots 61% from the field on 10 made shots a night and 56.8% from 3. He scored 30 plus in 4 of the last 5 games. Nekias, you'll like this one. Last 10 games, Kawhi Leonard shooting 60.9% on catch and shoot threes. That helps. And so you can feel the hierarchy a little bit more. There's a little bit more of a safety net. Obviously, James Harden's drives are important, and we'll touch on that. But with Kawhi, I think it's just the different ways they can get him involved. Pick and roll, if he's knocking down those pull-ups, it's really tough to deal with. And he has just been on fire.
Just to quickly bounce off of that, I feel like part of this is my fault. Because when we did our Clipper episode, I was like, hey, Kawhi just kept, as we're talking about all the Harden stuff, the Russ stuff, Kawhi hasn't necessarily looked like himself. And then on December 6th, I wrote a piece like, hey, Kawhi's good. These drives aren't looking the same. It's worth monitoring. Like, is this him doing some regular season maintenance, or is this a sign of peak Kawhi not being the peak Kawhi that we're used to? And over his last 5 games, he's averaging 34 points per game, shooting 65% from the field. So, yeah, I was like, I got my answer. I guess it was just a little bit of maintenance. But to bounce off of what Steve said, like, the usage has popped for me for sure. Like, I've liked the partnership with him and James Harden together. Like, it's been fun watching them play off of each other. Like, naturally, if one spaced, one pass away, that's not a comfortable help point for your defense. But watching them being used to pick and roll together, you just get some regular high pick and roll stuff. You get some double drag. And the fun part of them going double drag with Harden as your ball handler and Kawhi as the first screener, teams typically want to switch that first one. If you do that, that's putting a weaker defender on Kawhi Leonard. So even if that initial pick and roll doesn't work, the ball finds its way back to Kawhi, and now it's Kawhi being defended by like a guard-sized dude. And he can just bully his way into the mid-post to get to some of those comfortable pull-ups or get to some of the drives that I had some early season questions about. And so just watching them grow in chemistry together, I was looking at second spectrum a little bit earlier in the month of December. Over 1.2 points per possession on any trip featuring a Harden Kawhi pick and roll this month. That is pretty darn good. I made the joke with Steve a while ago. Like, what if Kawhi just ends up being like Harden's Embiid from last year with some of the short roll stuff and just some of the slower rolled pick and rolls between those two? That's been fun to watch develop.
Hey, real quick, though, I do want to mention this because I pulled this one for you too, Nekias. So last 10 games, Kawhi Leonard, 12.3 drives a game. How do you feel about it?
Feeling pretty good. Good.
Okay, just want to double check there. And the one thing I like that you mentioned as far as Harden's Embiid, I think James Harden, the fact that he's developing the chemistry with Zubac and Tice the way that he has, that's really helped enhance the Clippers' attack because his pick and roll just has more bite to it, but also they're looking for that pocket pass. They're looking for that short roll, and now they're playing out of it. I think that's been the biggest factor for me with the Clippers, way more decisive. Quicker decisions. I mean, we go back to the start of this Harden run. Ty Lue would call quick, a wide pin down, took 13 seconds to get into it. And now they are able to get up and flow and actually flow into things. And transition is not, hey, let me take a quick shot. No, let me push. Let me move it. Let's flow into a pick and roll. Let's keep it moving. You're seeing a lot more of those extra pass possessions from the Clippers, which has not been a staple. And if you tie it back into what we talked about at the start with the Clippers, how many of these problems are James Harden related? And how many of these issues are this is just kind of what the Clippers have problems with? So if you fix the tempo, you fix the movement, and quiet is kept, the defense has been solid. And the defense being ahead of the offense to a degree at the start was pretty good. I mean, if you look at it overall, with their 11th in offensive rating, their 7th in defensive rating, you'll probably take that with the potential for the last 10 games, 4th in offensive rating, 11th in defensive rating. So obviously you kind of want to stabilize, but when things are cooking, they can get there.
A few things to follow up on with this. In this 14-game run of being 11-3, 7th offensively, 6th defensively, the defense has been solid all year. Couple points that you guys brought up that I just want to add on to. It seems like in watching them that Harden has the ball in his hands less. And a lot of that is the function of playing with a Paul George, who's missed one game in this 14-game stretch, and playing with a Kawhi Leonard. You looked up today on NBA.com. Harden has the ball in his hands about 6 minutes a game. When he was playing in Philly, it was well over 8 minutes a game. So he's off the ball more. On the two-man game, I think this is important because in some ways, it's not that they didn't use the two guys, Kawhi and Paul George, together, but in some ways, it's very similar to what I like to call skill set and positional redundancy that you have in Boston with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And I talked about that last year. Now adding Kristaps Porzingis in Boston, now adding James Harden in LA, it gives those two guys in Kawhi and PG and in JB and JT, it gives them someone else to play but two-man game with. We've seen the success that Boston has had on the second side with Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis running dribble handoffs and pick and rolls. And although the Harden-Kawhi pick and roll doesn't necessarily always function as a traditional pick and roll where somebody's going to be in drop coverage, you've seen Kawhi get behind the defense in short roll. You've seen those matchup problems when they do switch. You've seen Harden, with some switching lineups for the other team when he does run a traditional pick and roll with Zubac. They're creating advantages in the half court. And that's what I've sort of liked to see. When you look at the Western Conference right now, there are, I believe, 8 teams between second place and ninth place. Clippers currently in 6th. 8 teams separated by 3 games in the loss column. The West, outside of Minnesota, who's created a little bit of separation here, the West seems so wide open. And we were so high on the Pelicans, so low on the Pelicans. Now we're high on the Pelicans again. We were so high on the Lakers. Then they lose, without AD, of course. Friday night, I called the game in San Antonio. They get blasted by San Antonio. And it just feels like on any given night, Houston's going to give you problems. Denver's awesome. Minnesota's a juggernaut. Like, the West is just tough. And all of the teams right now, from 10 down in the play-in spot, all of the teams outside of Phoenix have a winning record in their last 10 games. So those teams are playing, of course, outside of the top teams in these, those teams are playing as well as anyone in basketball. And it's going to make for a fascinating rest of the regular season. Add on the fact that a number of these teams potentially could make moves as we see what happens with, let's call it the Raptors, let's call it the Bulls. So a lot of fun left in the Western Conference as we assess sort of where the Clippers are at, where you thought they would be to start the season, where you thought they would be when they first made the James Harden trade. In terms of a tier for a contender, where are you at with them right now?
I think just to kind of quickly bounce off what you said, because the West has been as competitive as it has been, but also with various teams having these kind of up and down stretches, it's been kind of hard to parse through what the clear tier 1 is, what the clear tier 2 is for this group. Like, I feel like heading into the year, Denver was very much a tier 1 team for me. They've dealt with some injury stuff. They're also trying to figure out who's going to pop with their bench. So some natural growing pains. But I still very much believe they're going to be at worst like a top 2 team in the West when the games matter. So I guess just off the top of my head, I'll probably have the Clippers in that second tier with a few teams kind of nipping it like Denver. I guess they'd be like on par, I guess, with Minnesota, OKC. So like somewhere in there is probably where I would have them right now. Just want to get a larger sample there. Steve, what say you?
JJ Nekias, I got y'all a Christmas present. It's a semi-hot take.
Oh.
Tier 1 me.
Oh.
Tier
I like
1
it.
me. Tier
like
1
it.
me. If Kawhi is going to be healthy and playing at this level, we've seen what Kawhi can do in the playoffs. If you're going to have the waves with James Harden and Paul George, and they also have this Kawhi, they can balance each other out. You know, you can run hawk action with them. You can get paint touches. The defense obviously gets annoying for the Clippers as they go into the playoffs. They're playing more zone. I think the elements are there for them to make a run. So I'm going to put them in tier 1. And also, you know what? I'll give you a bonus one. Folks, don't pay attention to the seeding in the Western Conference. It's going to be all about matchups. And someone is going to be supremely disappointed. The Western Conference is restoring the feeling to when you had a team like the Memphis Grizzlies win 50 games and be the 7th seed.
I like the fact that we woke up on a Monday morning and we got a double hot take. I'll say it's a hot take. We got a double hot take from Steve Jones. I love it. I love it. On the first take, I'm going to hedge this a little bit because I'm in Nekias' camp where I want to see a little bit more in terms of a sample size from the Clippers, and we're approaching that. We certainly are approaching that with this starting lineup. We're getting close to that 20 to 25 game sample size that I love. I've seen this comment over the last week to 10 days a lot on Twitter, and honestly, I probably tend to agree with it. I'll add a couple players to it, but the idea of peak Kawhi outside of maybe Jokic, and maybe you'd put him in the same tier as Jokic, who would you most want to have on your team in the playoffs? I mean, the track record is there. You know, I'll throw Steph in there. I'll throw KD in there. I'll throw LeBron in there. Like, there's a bunch of guys that, you know, are certainly in that conversation for, you know, the best player in the playoffs. All those guys, Giannis as well. He's the 6th guy. Giannis as well. All those guys have been the best player on the best team. They've proven that, right? But peak Kawhi, we got so enamored, I think, last year in that first round before he got hurt. It was a nice reminder. And now we're seeing that in the regular season. Of course, he hasn't missed a game. You add in T. Lue, who I think is one of the premier coaches in the NBA, and just a good tactician and a good in-game adjuster, a good in-game manager. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low within a playoff series. So I'm going to hedge it a little bit and say I want to see more, but I'll put him in tier 1.5 in the Western Conference. Tier 1.5. They're in my tier 1.5.
Actually, go
ahead.
Well, before we move, can I add 1.5 stats to bother Nekias real quick?
Let's hear it.
Hey, Nekias, you know James Harden has as many deflections per game as Derek White does?
Yes.
Also, last 10 games, James Harden shooting 54.5% on catch and shoot threes. What's good?
James Harden's catch and shoot percentage, it would appear good. That's good stuff.
I love
also, I'm glad you brought up the deflections. We can move, though. But James Harden, he is playing quite hard on defense. Just wanted to give him the quick hat tip there. A lot of stocks, a lot of deflections.
I like that he said he's playing quite hard on defense. He didn't say he's playing quite hard for James Harden on defense. He's acknowledging that James Harden is playing defense, period. There's no caveat to that. I love that. Guys, that's the third take of the day. This is great.
We're off to a great start.
Guys, I know you wanted to lead us off with our second topic of this week, so fire away.
Okay. So very quick thing before I dig into it. One, really enjoyed the episode with you and Eric Gordon this past week. If I had known that you were going to have him on the pod, I would have told you to ask him about NBA 2K15 just to see what he says and see if there were any memories there. Beyond that, though.
Guys, can I say something? Can I say something real quick? I was not aware of that scene. That we'll call it acting scene. And Jason and Richie brought it to my attention. And I think it's one of the greatest pieces of content ever made, one of the greatest scenes ever in any video game. For those that aren't aware, Eric Gordon appeared in the My Player as a voiceover for himself. And let's just say he needs an acting coach. We'll just say that. He needs an acting coach. That's all.
Oh, there were so many players. That's a whole different pod. But anyway, during the conversation you had with him, you asked him if you felt like today's game kind of got a bad rep in terms of physicality and the way that it is called and things like that. And that brought it back to like fouls for me, but also free throws and how the general conversation tends to go towards players that draw a lot of fouls. And I wondered for you, like where you fall on like just the general foul drawing as a skill thing, or also just how people perceive free throws. And when it comes to evaluation, how do you factor in foul drawing and free throws into like a player's overall efficiency?
I don't want to give too much away, but on this month's episode of Islands in the League, which we will be recording tomorrow, and we will be out later in December, we're doing a little bit of a deep dive on offensive ratings. And obviously, we don't have much data prior to 96, 97 when the tracking era started, the play-by-play tracking era started. But there's a lot of interesting things in there. So I was actually going to look this up anyways, Nekias. And I spent about 45 minutes last night. I'm not tech savvy. And rather than just figure out a database that had all this information, I did it manually myself on basketballreference.com. So what's interesting, I'm going to place obviously all of this in context. I think what's interesting about the complaints around free throws and the way the game is called now. So in the 1980s, the average NBA team, this is the entire decade, 1980 to 1989. Why did I use that? Because that's what I refer to as the modern NBA. That's the rookie year of Larry and Magic, and that's what I consider the sort of nexus point for the modern NBA. So from 1980 to 1989, that decade, the average NBA team shot 29.14 free throws a game. In the 1990s, when the game was super physical and you were allowed to just hold and grab and hand check and everybody got to play through contact and no fouls were called, teams shot 26.83 free throw attempts a game. In the 2000s, 25.1. In the 2010s, 23.3. Are we seeing a trend here? I hope so. In the 2020s, the average NBA team shoots 22.7 free throws a game. The Philadelphia 76ers with the king of foul merchanting, Joel Embiid, they lead the league this year with 28 free throws attempts. In the last 44 NBA seasons, there have only been 4 occasions where the league leader for teams in free throw attempts per game were less than the 76ers at 28. And all of those instances occurred after 2012. Here's what's interesting to me. We obviously, prior to 96, 97, don't have the exact, I'm sure there's somebody that's done this on the internet and figured this out approximately, but we don't have the exact pace for teams, pace league-wide, right? We're estimating all of this because we don't have tracking data. We're estimating all of this based on fouls, turnovers, field goal attempts, all that stuff. But in general, the pace in the 90s, which was much slower, average across the league than it is in today's game. Same can be said for the 2000s, and same could be said for the 2010s. So if there's more possessions and there's less free throw attempts, well, and the rules are in favor of the offensive player, what am I missing here? Why are free throws going down? What am I missing? Now, today's game, we take more threes. I get it. There's potentially less drives. The game was played inside out back then, right? There's more post-ups. You see the Boston Celtics, they'd put their 3 front court players, 2 on one block, 1 on the other block. There's no spacing. I get it. We're pounding the ball inside. It's an interesting data point, all of this. And I'm not saying that those guys were more physical, less physical. I'm just pointing out the fact that in the eras where we were, told that the game was more physical relative to today, they shot more free throws. The point I've always made is that there were more fouls If that's physicality of the game, then that's fine. But there were fouls were harder, and there were more fights. The fouls were harder, and there were more fights. And it almost looks like the data backs that up to a degree. And of course, we have to factor in the types of shots and the types of plays. I get it. But in today's game, NBA players across the board are shooting less free throws than at any other point in time in the modern NBA. Those are facts.
I'm very glad I could tee you off on that one. That's a good stuff. I appreciate you giving us the preview there. Like, I just feel like it's overblown to a degree when we get into like the physicality talks and the talks of foul merchants and stuff. It makes for good Twitter memes, but like when it comes into actual analysis, to where it feels like guys like Joel Embiid's getting dinged, Trae Young's getting dinged, which Trae is just an interesting case study for this in general. Probably less so now that he's back to making threes at a pretty high clip after a really cold start. But like just kind of baking in, he's shooting this from the field. However, the true shooting percentage is still like 58 in the 58 to 60 range, which is still really good. What do you do with that? And so like I've just had my brain churning on that portion of the program there. So I appreciate you jumpstarting that conversation with me with Eric Gordon.
Well, it's interesting because I also looked some guys up. I didn't go across the board, but I just thought of like players from different eras who scored at a high level. I came into the NBA at 2006, 2007. And I remember my second year, this was like a thing that Stan talked about all 5 years we were in Orlando. It's like when you play against great scorers, there's 3 things that you have to stop them from doing. You have to stop them in transition. You have to get back. No easy layups in transition. You have to be mindful of their cutting. So no easy buckets in the half court off a blind cut. And you have to keep them off the foul line. Great scorers are great because they can hit tough shots. And there's greatness to their offensive game. But they're also great scorers because they get out in transition. LeBron James, Giannis. They're also great scorers because they're great cutters. Dwayne Wade, LeBron James. They're also great scorers because they get to the free throw line. And historically speaking, you go down the board, and Larry Bird, of all the guys I looked up, was like the one outlier on this that didn't take, let's call it in his prime, 6 to 10 free throws a game. He was somewhere in the 4 to 6 range in his prime. Outside of him, Michael Jordan, 7 to 12 free throws a game, except for his Washington years. Kobe Bryant, 6 to 10 free throws a game, except for early when he was not a primary option. And then late, post-injury. Barkley, except for the Houston years and his rookie year, 7 to 12 free throws a game. David Robinson, who won a scoring title, 8 to 12 free throws a game, except for late in his career when he was, basically the 4th or 5th option. Shaq, of course, Hack-a-Shaq, 9 to 13 free throws a game. Embiid, right now in his prime, with some outliers, of course, early in his career, 8.5 to 12 free throws a game. Durant, 6 to 10 free throws a game. Harden, 7 to 12 free throws a game, except for now and early in his career in OKC prior to Houston. And then, of course, Wilt, who shot 17 free throws a game in some years. But for his career, 10 to 17 free throws a game in his prime. The best players have always shot a lot of free throws. So the foul hunting is interesting to me because I do think there's some of that, and I'll acknowledge that. But what I've always said is, you talk about James Harden and Embiid specifically, Trae Young, I'll throw in that camp as well. They're geniuses at drawing fouls. They know the rules. They know how defenses play them. They're going to exploit that. Like, there was, I think it was 16-17 was the last year we had it. Maybe it was 17-18. You think about everybody all of a sudden starts playing drop coverage, right? So if you're a shooter and you know the guy's going over the screen, you stop at the screen and he bumps you as you go into your shooting motion. You got 3 free throws. Like, everybody just exploited that. And they said, okay, that's not going to be a shooting foul anymore. Harden with the up and under grab. We got rid of that. Joel Embiid is a physical force. He's going to get fouled. Giannis is a physical force. He's going to get fouled. I saw something the other day where Giannis took like 20-some free throws and everybody's complaining about it. And then you watch the game and you're like, well, yeah, they wrapped him up 6 times. They pulled him by the arms 6 times. Like, of course he's going to shoot 20 free throws. Those are fouls. That's the point. That's what makes defense hard. You have great offensive players. And this is true in any era. You have great offensive players who have an advantage They will exploit those advantages, and you are faced with a tough choice. Do I not foul? Do I foul? I don't buy this thing that like we're hands off. The data I just laid it out for you. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Are there some bad calls? Yeah. There have been historically bad calls in every era. And yes, I always stick up for this era. It's true. I don't give a fuck. It's true. Nostalgia is a drug, and you guys are all high on it.
I did what I came here to do.
Mission accomplished. That's what I'm talking about. Way to go to Nekias.
Oh, man. All right, guys. All right, let's wrap this up with the third thing. First of all, I just want to say something. This is the second time I've addressed this. Legs and I gave Jaquez Jr. some love, and everybody freaked out because we said he was the third best rookie. He's been the third best rookie. He's been the third best rookie. He's even better since we said that. He's been the third best rookie. And there are a lot of good. I love these guys. I love Lively. Love Thompson. Love Brandon Miller. I want to talk about Brandon Miller. Little rookie check-in right now. All right. For Brandon Miller. Second overall pick. Has moved into the starting lineup. He's started 16 of the 22 games he's played in. What's your overall assessment of where he's at? What have you liked? What have you seen that maybe there's potential for growth, and even growth within game 1 and game 22 for him?
I would say for me, like one of the things I asked Steve when we had our rookie report that's on the channel, go check it out, is that one of the things for this rookie class was that it felt like more rookies were getting a lot more responsibility than rookies in years past. And one of the guys that I brought up was Brandon Miller, and it was on the defensive end. Because like at that point, early in my head was the Knicks game where he just had to defend Jalen Brunson. And it was like part of a run where he just had to defend a bunch of point guards and shooting guards and fight over screens. And I was like, I don't know if he's well equipped to defend guards right now, but he does have the length for it. I think he's going to grow into a good multi-positional defender. And so like the defensive responsibility is something that's popped for me early, and just tracking how good he gets at that, how good he is at using his length, how good he is at fighting over screens, how good he is at reattaching, things like that. Offensively, it's just the shot making. He just has such a pure jumper. He does not care about contests. And in games where he has it going, he definitely doesn't care about those late contests when he's fighting up. So it's nice to see him knock down threes at the clip he's knocking down. When he sees drop coverage, he is comfortable flowing into pull-ups and flowing into floaters. If there's something that I don't like, and I'll pass it off from here, I guess less don't like and more just continuing to monitor. It's just, what does the rim pressure look like? And what do the shots at the rim look like once he gets all the way down there? That's kind of where I kind of ended. But like the defense intrigues me. The shot making is there. Like he's had some fun passing flashes. Very much a secondary offensive option right now. But that part's been fun for me.
The Nekias special rim pressure, you love to see it. For me, I've liked some of the drives from him. I think he has shown some patience, as you stated, against the drop coverage. I think he knows how to engage the defense, how to get to his spot. I think for me, I'm worried. I'm thinking about his setups. If he's off ball, is he setting his man up? Is he coming off the screen? Is he ready to go? Because movement is his best friend. I feel like when he's involved with dribble handoffs, it allows him to get downhill in a different way than just purely pick and roll. And you wonder, as the scoring progresses, how do the reads look like in pick and roll? Because right now it's drop coverage. So I think he has a rhythm of, okay, if I can keep my man behind me, or I can explore the space, I can get to a pull-up or I can get to a floater. But as you mentioned, if he gets in there a little bit too deep, is he just committed to trying to finish? Okay, I'm here. Let me see if I can go up and get one in. That's where I want to see the growth. Defensively, I want to see him use his size and length more. I think he has good off-ball instincts. I think closeouts can get him in trouble. On ball, the footwork gets wonky to where, hey, you're tall. Like I was 6'2". I didn't have the length. I had to get in front of you to give myself the best chance. You don't have to be that close to the ball. Because he gets up and he pressures, and then his footwork is a little wonky, and now it's a middle drive, and I know that has to drive Coach Steve Clifford up a wall. And it's like, hey, man, like good job, good closeout, back up a little bit, contain it, and I think you'll be solid. But I think the fact that he's making threes, huge. I think 10 straight games where he's made 2 or more threes. It's been fun to watch him grow.
Yeah, a couple things there. On the finishing, I feel like this is a reason why rookies generally shoot a lower percentage and aren't necessarily efficient. The 3 games I've had when he talks about Wemby, he talks about every game is an education. And so your first time going through, it's like, well, this is the first time I've shot this shot in an NBA game against NBA centers, against NBA athletes. And so there's like a learning curve with what is a high percentage shot for me. And so I think finishing is for rookies is always sort of an issue. You see like really bad, awkward shots in the paint as it relates to Brandon Miller. I think finding that balance between drives, and I like that Steve brought up the movement piece. I think at his size, when you get him on the move, he has a big advantage. But I also think at his positional size, he has an advantage in straight pick and roll. And to me, if he becomes an elite player, it is finding that balance between getting to the basket and being I would say high volume, like a high volume, high efficiency mid-range scorer, because he has so much size at the 2 position. That can be a shot for him that you go late in the clock. All right, come here. Mark Williams, come here. Let's go play. And he can get his shot off. So I like what I've seen so far. And there is no, there's to me, there's nothing more valuable when you're a young player than if you can shoot the basketball. You can shoot the basketball, you're gonna have an impact. We've seen that with Jordan Hawkins from the Pelicans at times, although his minutes are way down. He's been out of the rotation a little bit, but shooting is such a valuable skill set. And at his size, Brandon Miller has that and a lot more. And so I've liked what I've seen. Fellas, always fun. I told you at the beginning I was not going to rant, and I may have gone on 2, although one was much more mild-mannered than I would have liked. Always fun to chop it up with you guys.
Appreciate you having us.
Yes, 2 rants, 2 takes.